Welcome to our tutorial on mastering Git, where we will take a deep dive into GitFlow, GitHub, and best practices for effective version control. GitFlow is a robust branching model designed to streamline the development and release process. It divides work into different branches like master, development, release, hotfix, bug fix branches. Let's break down into different branches and see what they are used for. Master branch or main branch, as it is known as in GitHub, is the official release history. It contains production deployed code. We will see that in action when we go to the GitHub section of this tutorial. At the start of your project lifecycle, this branch is obviously empty. Develop branch is derived from the master branch at the start of the project lifecycle, and it acts as the main integration branch. This is where all the feature branches are merged back. Feature branches. Every feature or enhancement to the software is done in a separate branch. These branches branch off from the develop branch, and developers can work independently on these features in these branches. After the feature is completed, this feature can be merged back into develop branch. Release branches. When it's time to create a deployment, a release branch is created from the develop branch. This branch acts as a staging area for minor adjustments, bug fixes, and last-minute changes before the deployment. Remember, once the release is deployed in production, the release branch is merged back into master branch to create a snapshot of the history releases. Also, all the adjustments that are made after the release branch was created from the develop branch are also merged back into the develop branch so as not to lose any changes. Hotfix branches. Every critical issue in production is fixed in a hotfix branch. Hotfix branch is created from the master branch. Once the fix has been done and deployed to production, hotfix branch is merged back into master and develop branch. By following the GitFlow workflow, teams can maintain a structured development process, ensure code stability, and streamline the release cycle. Let's talk about GitHub now. GitHub is a web-based platform built around Git. It provides a range of functionalities to facilitate collaboration, code management, and project coordination. Let's jump straight into GitHub. The first thing you need to do is create an account if you don't already have one. You can do this by clicking on the sign up button on the right side. GitHub provides free and paid plans. Paid plans include Pro, Team, and Organization plans. As a private person, free plan will provide you with everything you would need, so stick to the free plan for now. After you have set up your account and you can log into GitHub, GitHub will take you to your dashboard. My first recommendation to you is to set up your SSH key, which will allow you to push changes to GitHub without entering your password every time. To do that, click on your profile image on the right side and click on Settings and go on the left side to SSH and GPG keys. Here, clicking on the button New SSH key, you can create new keys. Let's go to the dashboard after that and click on the button New Repository to create new repository. Let's name it GitFlow. You can make the repository public or private. I will make it public. You can add a README file, and you can also add a gitignore file for a particular language you would like to. You can choose a license. I set it to none. After that, you click Create Repository. This will take you straight to your new repository page. You can see the two files that were created while we created the new repository, gitignore and README. You will also see some menus on the top like issues, pull requests, and settings. We will check them out when we will talk about best Git practices. For now, let's clone this repository on a local machine. If you do not know what clone is, check out my tutorial on basic Git commands. Link is in the description below. To clone, we need the Git URL. You will find it in the drop-down code here. You will see that the SSH is pre-selected. That's because I have my SSH key set up in GitHub. If you don't have that, you would have to use the HTTPS URL. Click here to copy the URL. After that, we will move to our terminal. Once you are in your terminal, use the command git clone and the URL that you just copied from GitHub to clone the repository to your local machine. Once you have done that, you will see that a new folder GitFlow has been created on your local machine. If you go inside the folder and check the contents of the folder, you will see that there's a gitignore file and a README file. Let's use the newly created repository to see how the GitFlow workflow works. If you do git status here, you will see that we are on our main branch. If you remember, main or the master branch is the branch which contains the release history. First thing we are going to do is create our develop branch. Remember, develop branch is our integration branch where all the feature branches are merged back into and also created from. The command we use for that is git checkout -p develop. Once we do that, We can confirm that we are our branch developed. Now we're going to push it back to GitHub. Command for that is git push. We get an error because right now develop branch doesn't exist in GitHub. Solution is already given by Git to us. We run that new command setting the upstream and develop branch has been pushed to GitHub. Let's go back to GitHub. Back in GitHub, if we click on the drop down here, we will see that a new branch develop has been created. Perfect. Let's say business wants us to create 2 new features for the next release. So let's do that. To first create a feature branch. So we're going to do that with our previous command git checkout -b feature _1. Let's move over to Visual Studio and implement our new feature. To simulate that, I will just write in text feature 1. We move back to our terminal and we can see that the file has been changed. We will add the file and commit it with the message feature 1. Now we have to implement feature 2. Remember that we are in branch feature 1. To implement any feature, we have to be on develop branch. So let's go back to develop branch using the command git checkout develop. Once we are on the develop branch, we can create the new feature branch feature _2. You go back to Visual Studio and see that our changes have disappeared. That is because we are back on develop branch and feature branch 1 was never merged back into develop branch. So as a second developer, I will implement feature 2 in parallel. I do the same. I go back to terminal and I commit my changes. Let's say we are done with our features 1 and 2. So we need to merge these branches back into develop. But before we do that, let's push our feature branches to GitHub. To do that, we will go into the branch and use the command git push. We get the same error messages because GitHub doesn't know about these branches. So we use the command that git suggests us to push the branch to GitHub. Now let's push branch to also do the remote repository. To be honest, you do not really need to push feature branches from your local machine to the remote repository just to be able to merge them back to develop branch. But we do them, as you will see later in the video, because it is one of the best practices to be used while working with Git. Because 1, it acts as a backup in case you need to work longer than a day on a feature branch and your computer crashes overnight. Secondly, your work should always be reviewed in a pull request before it is merged to the develop branch. And for someone who is reviewing your work, it's easy to review if they can check out your work on the local machine and see it in their own IDE. So now let's merge the feature branches into the develop branch. To do that, first we will check out the develop branch. Once we have done that, we can use the command git merge and the branch from which we want to merge the changes into the develop branch. Once we do that, you will see that the README file has been updated. If you look at the file in our Visual Studio, we will see that the feature 1 changes have been added into the file. We can go back to the terminal and now we will merge feature 2 into develop branch. To do that, we will use the command git merge feature _2. Once you do that, you will see that the merge failed. That is because we changed the same line in the same file and Git doesn't know what to do now. To resolve this conflict, Git will tell you to fix the conflicts manually and then add the file and merge it manually. So let's go and do that. In README, you will see that it has both the changes from feature 1 and changes from feature 2. Me as a developer knows that I want to keep both features. So what I will do is I will remove these comments and keep both features in the file and save the file. I will add the file manually and then I will commit it. And that's it. Now in my branch, both feature branches have been merged and I can now push the branch back to the remote repository. Let's do a recap of what we learned so far. We talked about GitFlow workflow. Then we saw GitHub and created a new account. After that, we created a new repository. We used this new repository to see how GitFlow workflow works. We started with a main branch or master branch and we created a develop branch. After that, we created some feature branches to create some new features. When we were done with the features, we merged these feature branches back into the develop branch. We also saw how a merge conflict can be resolved manually. Let's talk about the release branch. When it's time to release your software to production, we do that in GitFlow by creating a release branch. Create a release branch, we use our command git checkout -b release with the version number. These 3-digit versioning comes from semantic versioning. We will talk about that in a future video. Once we have created the release branch, the software from this release branch will be deployed to a test environment and will be tested before a go ahead is given by the testers and the product owner to deploy this software in production. Let's say a bug was found or we missed something that was supposed to be done. We can fix that bug or the missing feature in the release branch. We will do that in our Visual Studio. So let's say we missed in the feature to some X. So we will edit there. We can go back to our release branch. We can see that the file has been edited or modified. Now we can add and commit our missing changes. Once we have done that, the software can be deployed again for testing and retested. Let's say all the tests were green and then we can deploy to production. Once the software has been deployed to production, we have to go back and merge this release branch back into master branch, because remember, master branch is the record of production history, and that is why it's really important that we do this merge after the production go live happens and not before. Why is that important? We will see that in a minute. To merge the release branch into the master or the main branch, first we need to check out that branch. We will do that. After that, we can do a git merge. You can see in Visual Studio that the README file has feature 1, feature 2 plus the X, the missing feature. Remember that the missing feature was implemented in the release branch after we created the release branch from the develop branch. It means this X is missing in the develop branch. Let's confirm that. So we will go to our develop branch. We can see in Visual Studio that only feature 1 and feature 2 has been implemented and the X is missing. To bring that missing feature back into the develop branch, we also need to merge the release branch into the develop branch. Once we do a merge, we can go back to Visual Studio. You can see in Visual Studio that in the develop branch, the README file now has all the changes that we made before we went live. One of the best practices of using Git mandates that once the release branch has been merged back into the master branch should be tagged. Tagging is like bookmarking your software. The reason for tagging your master branch after a release is that maybe in the future you would like to come back to a previous version for debugging purposes or audit purposes. Create a tag. You first need to go to your master or main branch. Once you are there, you can create your tag using the command git tag -a. A stands for annotation, and the text after that is the annotation that you will provide to this tag, and -m you can provide a message. Once you create this tag, you can use the command git tag to see the tags that you have on your machine. You can also push these tags to the remote repository using the command git push origin -- tags. Let's quickly talk about the advantages of using a release branch and why we did not simply created our production release from the develop branch. The reason is that if you use the develop branch to create a production release, there has to be a lockdown or a code freeze on the develop branch. This is because the release scope must not be corrupted or changed. And a release process can sometimes take days because testing needs time and there are bureaucracies in big corporations. So for these days, no one can work on the future versions. But if you create a release branch, then the develop branch is free for other developers to create future features or do bug fixes and things like that. Let's talk about hotfix branches now before we move on to the last section of this video, best practices. Let's say everything is running on smoothly. It's been a couple of days. We have implemented 2 new features, feature 3 and feature 4. Suddenly you get a call from your support department. There's a big production problem and you need to solve it like right now. So what do? You cannot just take the status right now as you see on the screen and start fixing the bug, because remember, we have introduced 2 new features, feature 3 and feature 4 in the develop branch. First, we would need to remove these changes so that we have the status like it's on the production. So what we do in this case is, remember that main or the master branch is the status of production. So we need to use that. We need to check out the master branch, and from there we will create a hotfix branch to fix this bug. So let's go and do that now. So I will first check out my main branch. Once I have done that, let's go to Visual Studio and make sure we have the status when we went live. We can see that there's only feature 1 and feature 2 plus the X that we did during the release. Remember that GitFlow states that a hotfix has to be done using a hotfix branch. So the first thing we do is we create a new branch, hotfix/1.0.1. This versioning again comes from semantic versioning, which we will talk about in a future video. So we go and create this new branch. After that, we can go into our Visual Studio and implement the fix. Let's say the fix is Y. Let's now add the file and then commit it with an appropriate message. We also need to push this hotfix branch to remote so that it can be deployed to a test server, tested, and after that deployed on production. Once that is done and our production state has changed, we need to merge these changes back into master so that master again represents the state of production. So to do that, we will check out our main or master branch and then we will do a merge. The command to merge is git merge, and the hotfix branch, once we have done that, our master branch should be updated with the hotfix change. But remember, we need to bring this change also back to the develop branch, because if we don't do that, in the next release, the same bug will occur again. So we do the same. We need to check out our develop branch and then we need to merge the hotfix branch in there also. We might get some merge conflicts. We already saw that how to get rid of these merge conflicts. So we will do that quickly. After that, we can save this file, we give a meaningful commit message, and then we can push all our changes back to remote. One more thing we need to do is tag this hotfix into the master branch. To do that, we will check out our main branch and then use the command git tag to create a tag. After that, we can push the tag to remote repository. Congratulations for making it through the GitFlow workflow demo using GitHub. In this last section, we will talk about best practices of using Git. We mentioned some of them in our last section. I also deliberately did not use best practices all the time during the demo to show you the contrast in this section. The number one and the most obvious best practice to use Git is to use GitFlow. GitFlow will allow you to have a clean develop and release process. That way, every individual developer can work on their feature branches without corrupting the develop branch. In this way, the develop branch will always be in a ready to deploy state. Also, having a release branch will separate the develop and the release process so that some developers can work on future features without affecting the scope of the release. The next best practice is accountability. That is, connecting the change in software to documentation. Software should only be changed for a reason that is documented by business. Remember the menus we saw on top of GitHub repository in the beginning. One of them is issues. Issues is analogous to user story in Jira. That is what is used in your corporation. The idea behind user story or issues is that every change that is expected to be done in the software is first documented by your product owner or your business as an issue or a user story. We can do that by clicking on the button new issue here. Once you click on that, you can create a comprehensive user story or an issue with a lot of text. You could even add some attachments, some photos, and create a really nice documentation of what's supposed to be done, including test cases and expected result and things like that. Here I have added a new issue with some generic text and even uploaded an image. Let's click on submit new issue and you can see that our new issue has been created and has been granted an ID, which is number 1, and it has even an image and things like that. The real magic happens when we implement this change, commit it and push it. So let's do that. I have implemented the feature 5. Now let's move on to our terminal, commit it and push it. You can see in the terminal that the file has been modified. We will add the file to Git, then we will commit this file with a message. The big difference here is that we will use hash and the ID of the issue that we want this commit message to be assigned to. After that, we can push our changes. Now let's go back to GitHub and check out our issue again. If you look at our issue, you will see that our latest commit push that we just made has been linked to this issue. If you click on this link here, you will see exactly what part of the software was changed. And the other way around, from this diff, you also have a link directly to the issue. As you can see, we have linked our changes to an issue. You can even go to code, change to branch, develop, and then you will see that the file and the commit message and the issue has been properly linked. So you can either click on the commit and see what was changed, or you can click on the issue number and see for what reason this software was changed. And so we have achieved a direct connection between the software changes and the documentation from the business side. And this brings us to our next best practice, and that is to always include an issue ID or a user story ID in your commit messages so Git can connect your software changes to the documentation. Let's move on to our next best practice, and that is naming convention of our branches. Till now we have been creating our branches with names like feature_1. What I like to do is to have some kind of subdirectory structure. So all feature branches will be in a subdirectory feature, or release branches will be in a subdirectory release, and the same for hotfix. So let's go ahead and create a feature branch for our new issue. Here I will create a new feature branch, feature/1_feature_xyz. You could use any name here. After that, I will make some changes in my software. Now I can add, commit, and push my changes to remote. We use the ID of one of the issues in the name of the branch. Jira will automatically connect this branch to the user story if the branch name connects the ID of the user story. GitHub unfortunately does not do that, but we can do that manually. So we can go to GitHub, go to our issue and click on development here, and then click on the branch that we just created to be used as the branch for this issue. After that, we can click apply. And that brings us to our next best practice. Pull request. Pull request is a proposal to merge your changes from one branch to another branch. Let's talk about develop branch. If every software developer would merge their changes into the develop branch without any review, there's a chance that they make a mistake and the develop branch is not stable anymore. Pull request allows us to avoid this situation. Every time somebody creates a feature branch to implement a feature, they will create a pull request so that somebody has to review these changes, and only after these changes have been reviewed will a merge happen into the develop branch. Let's create our first pull request. To create a pull request, you need to go to the branch whose changes need to be merged into develop. On your branch in GitHub, you need to click on contribute. Then you can click on the button open pull request. You will see that the pull request tries to merge changes from the branch into the main branch. This is because our default branch is currently set to the main branch. Let's go and change that so our future branches and all our future pull requests are automatically created so that the code is being merged into develop. To do that, you need to click on the settings button here. Once you are there, you can change the default branch here. So you click on the button switch to another branch. After that, you choose a develop branch and click update. Click on the message here. After that, the default branch will be changed to develop branch, as you can see with the message up here and here. After this, we can go back to our branch. Once we are in the branch, you can click on open pull request and you will see that the pull request will be created to merge changes from the branch to the develop branch. In this pull request, we can write some information for the reviewer who is going to review our changes. We can write what was done, how it was done, how should we test it. Another hint is that you can use markdown in this description. So I have added some text, what was changed, how to test, some short comments, and if you look at the preview, you can see that it was translated into a nice looking document. Once you're happy with your pull request, you can click on the button create pull request and a new pull request will be created. You can see that pull request by clicking on the tab here, pull request. This is our new pull request. If you click on the pull request, you can see that I can already merge this pull request into the develop branch, which is not good because no review has been done. This is because some settings in the projects are missing. So let's go back and fix that. We can go to the settings here and go to branches. Once we are in the branches, we can add a branch rule set. We can name it as a develop branch rule set. We can enable it. And then if you go down, you will see that there's an option says require a pull request before merging. You can click on that and say you at least require one approval. You need to provide your password to create that rule set. Once you have done that, the rule set will be created. As you can see, there's a warning message. This rule set does not target any resources and will not be applied. So we can change that down here in target branches. At target, include default branch, which if you remember is the develop branch. So we save the changes and now we will go back to our pull request and you can see that this pull request cannot be merged because one review is missing. You can also create more restrictions on pull request. For example, some builds should be passed before you're allowed to merge your pull request back into develop branch. Also, you can have a restriction like all the tests are green before you are allowed to merge your pull request back to develop branch. As you can see, pull request gives you an extra level of confidence for every change that is merged back into develop branch, giving you more confidence on the quality and the deployability of the develop branch to production. Let's talk about some more best practices that you should use while using Git. One of them is tagging after production release. We saw that in our demo. So basically after you do a production release and you merge your release branch back into your master branch, you should tag your master branch. This will help you in the future to roll back to a previous state for multiple purposes. For example, audit reason, or if you would like to reproduce a bug that happened in the past. Another best practice that we saw during the demo is using semantic versioning. This gives you better control over major, minor, and hotfixes releases. The next best practice is to do smaller and frequent commits. Because remember, hey, you have the whole history of commits, so you can always go back, roll back if you are not sure of what you did was correct. If you do frequent commits, you will prevent having a really big change set where you will lose control over it. And the last best practice I would like to mention is to push your changes at end of your working day. The reason being backup capability of the GitHub server. Because computers can crash and you do not want your whole work day to be lost because of that. So you should push your changes at end of your working day. It doesn't matter if your branch is complete or not. Let's do a quick recap of the best practices. Number 1, use GitFlow. Number 2, accountability. So always use issues and use the issue ID in your commits and branch names. Number 3, naming conventions for branches. So use subfolder kind of structure. So release / version of the release, hotfix / the hotfix version, and feature / the name of the feature branch, which obviously should include the issue ID. Number 4, you should always use pull requests. Number 5, you should tag your master branch after you merge your release branch into master branch after a production release. Number 6, use semantic versioning. Number 7, do frequent and smaller commits. And number 8, push your work change to the remote repository at end of your working day, whether it is finished or not. That brings us to the end of the video. Before saying bye, here's a piece of information. GitFlow is already deprecated. We will talk about that in our next video.